Well, nice to meet you guys. Welcome to the UK. Sorry about the weather.
Thank you. Oh, this is great.
To be expected.
Yeah, exactly.
London.
This is spring for you.
Yeah, exactly.
So, The Resident, I've seen the first couple of episodes. You pack a lot into this show. There's a lot to unpack, and I feel like there's a lot coming. Just give us a little bit of a basic overview of what to expect from the show.
I mean, the pilot is just sort of it's just the beginning. I mean, you're trying to cram so much into a first episode to sort of define what the theme of the show is going to be. So it's really just a snippet of what's to come. But I think what we've been saying is it's a completely different take on your typical medical drama. You know, it's sort of exposing maybe a little bit more of the corrupt side of things, the business side of things, the lack of accountability and transparency, things that aren't really often talked about, and certainly, things that I was shocked to learn. So
absolutely,
that was part of the appeal.
Yeah. I think one nice compliment that we all received when people watched that first episode is it felt like all these characters had a history there. They had been working together for a long time, and that's really hard to achieve in the first episode. And I think that hopefully the audience will see all the history that's been going on off camera and the way that these characters interact. And I think that goes down to the collaboration we had and the relationship we had.
And the sort of innate chemistry that we had from the get-go.
Yeah.
You know, when you shoot a pilot, it can go either way. You know, sometimes it's a bit of a disaster, to be honest. And then in this circumstance, and a few of my experiences, like, you really get a sense that something's going to work when you all get onto set together for the first time. And we just had a really good working relationship, all of us, from the very, very beginning. From the first night I got to Atlanta and Yumi and Bruce went for dinner. Yeah. There was this feeling of, oh, have we done this before together? I mean, it's just sort of like we all had known each other.
And I think the audience will feel that.
Yeah,
and I think the audience connecting in from the very beginning will feel like this is a real world, this is a real working hospital, these are real characters, and they all have been working together for X amount of time, and I think that that's hard to achieve in the first episode. So I think that that's a
and it builds. It does
element.
get sort of better, doesn't
Absolutely, yeah. It builds throughout the course of the season. We have what also makes us different from some other procedurals is there's some serialized storylines that are connecting all the characters, that if you tune into each episode, you kind of see these characters develop and these storylines develop. It's not just a patient comes in, we solve the case, and that patient survives. So I think those serialized elements also make us a little bit different as well.
One of the things that I'm really interested in watching develop, and as you say, it feels like watching it, the characters have this relationship that we're not aware of in the first couple of episodes, particularly with Nick and with Conrad. You get the impression there's a lot to unpack there. Nick kind of seems to be the character that fits between Devon and Conrad and kind of helps everybody.
Sort of manages a lot of personalities within the hospital, I think. Nick has a very, and what drew me to her is she's a very strong moral compass. She's willing to do anything for her patients. The reason she is a nurse is because she, her mother died through medical error when she was very, very young, and so she's incredibly passionate about what she does. What makes her different from Conrad is that he's willing to go even further, in the sense that he's a little bit unhinged at times, and so she sort of tries to pull him back. But sometimes she's successful and sometimes she's unsuccessful. It's sort of whenever she can, Yeah. And it's kind of what keeps them at a distance. I mean, they have this deep love for each other, and you get the sense that they've got this insane chemistry, and and that they've been sort of on and off again. You get that sense in the pilot, but you come to realize that it's a much more rooted, deep emotional bond that they have. And it was one that was really fun to explore, I think, because you're playing with so many layers,
Yeah, absolutely.
And particularly the way that Conrad treats Devon when he first arrives there. My first thought was Conrad maybe a bit of a douche.
Right.
But then by the end of the episode, I was starting to maybe think there's a lot more there, and I was actually more sympathetic to that character. What can you tease about their relationship moving forward?
Well, I think with that relationship, Conrad is a third-year resident, and he has real-world experience in terms of the hospital, or his background is a military background of being in the battlefield and having to deal with things at the seat of his pants in terms of medical issues there. And Devon is going to be eventually an incredible doctor. He doesn't, at this particular point, have the real world experience. He's coming in from school, so I think that that's the contrast that you're seeing there. And in terms of the way Conrad handles Devon, you never know what's going to come through the hospital door. You're going to have chaos at any moment. So Conrad is the leader in his aspect with Devon, and so he's trying to insert a little bit of chaos. So that's the way I approached it in terms of in the beginning when you meet him, he's pushing all these buttons to make him lose track of certain things and make him a little bit of chaos, so that when something does come through the door, he's expecting those things.
But there's method to his madness.
There's method to his madness, and he's basically trying to make sure that Devon doesn't make the same mistakes that Conrad did. He's trying to protect him, but we see in the first episode already that kind of the one mistake that Devon makes in terms of that, and Devon learns and grows from that. So I think that that's the way I kind of approach that. Conrad, in terms of his relationship with Devon, is inserting a little bit of chaos for the better good of the patients. It's all about the patients and trying to do what he can for the patients.
So my last question then for you guys is, why should people tune in the UK?
I mean, why? Yeah.
I think in terms of, I mentioned this before, is just life and death and health interconnects us all.
Yeah.
The systems, in terms of the healthcare system, which we do tap into, is the American healthcare system, which is different than it is in the UK or anywhere else in the world.
It's still fascinating. I mean, it's fascinating that there still is universal healthcare there, and the business side of it is fascinating, really. I mean, I'm Canadian, and I was fascinated to learn everything I had to learn for this, and to just sort of see what really sort of happens from all these different perspectives. It's very interesting.
And Universal, which it's on, is very relationship and character driven, and that's what this show is in terms of the relationships, and for example, this relationship of what happens when a doctor makes mistakes. How do they compartmentalize that? How do they deal with that? And I think that the health and the life, and in terms of the human element, is something that's universal, regardless of anybody, of any walk of life or any culture or any country, that can relate to and connect to. Maybe they won't connect to the system aspect because it's different, but the human elements anybody can connect to.
Absolutely.